Hey, good morning, everybody. I want you to pretend you're listening to the classic Creedence Clearwater Revival song, I Ain't No Fortunate Son. The classic line, I ain't no senator's son, because after all, some people just get away with things the rest of us don't. Back in the 60s and 70s, if you were well placed enough, I guess you didn't get your hind end shot off in Vietnam. And I guess some presidents' sons these days thought that they got a discount on justice. And Hunter Biden, as you see in the papers this morning, has been indicted for tax evasion. Now, I'm of two minds about this. I'm not a fan of taxation. And I remind everybody that it took an amendment.
A fan. I'm not a fan of taxation.
No, but I mean, it's a serious discussion. It took an amendment to the United States Constitution to create a federal income tax because there were plenty of people that thought this exceeded the limited powers of government. And if you want to look at the triumph of implicit Marxism in American life, look at the progressive income tax, or look at the notion that they take a percentage of your labor as a tribute to the public, as paying your fair share for the public weal. But it's the only marketplace that adopts this blatantly kind of socialistic metric for the services that you purchase. What am I talking about? If you go into a store today to purchase a gallon of milk and there are three people in line, one a homeless man, one a middle-class housewife, the other the president of a Fortune 500 company, when they take that jug of milk to the counter, each will pay the same price, whether it's $3, $4, or $5. Let's just call it $4. That $4 is an enormous percentage of the homeless person's weekly income. It's a de minimis portion of the housewife's or the middle class housewife's spending for the week, and it's not noticeable for the CEO.
Amazon spending for the week, yeah, de minimis in proportion to the Amazon spending per week, right?
No, but I mean, it's a serious discussion. The value of the item is intrinsic. And what we exchange for it is the value, it's a price, and that price reflects the market price of the item. Well, the government views us as fungible items it can take a percentage of our labor for a unit of service provided. And so some people pay no taxes, they get tax credits. Some people pay a little bit of taxes. Some people pay a lot, and gazillionaires probably pay very little, but they spend it all on tax accountants figuring out how to avoid paying any. The tax code's a mess, and taxation is theft, in my view, and it's theft by degree. Well, Hunter obviously believed that as well. We have what's called a voluntary tax system in the United States, meaning you are expected to report your income and to report it honestly annually on a federal income tax form. Failure to file the form is a misdemeanor offense. Lying on it is a felony. So, one sign that a person is playing games with their taxes might be that they don't file forms at all on the theory that it's better to commit a misdemeanor than a felony. Hunter committed a felony, apparently. Federal prosecutors have charged him with a number of counts that'll carry up to 17 years, contending that he failed to pay about $1.6 million income on about $1.6 million in taxes. He diverted funds within the entities he was operating within to avoid scrutiny. In other words, he broke the voluntary compact with government. Now, if I were Hunter's lawyer, I'm saying, well, what that meant is he refused to chop off a finger, mail it into the government and say, thank you for wasting it. But the fact of the matter is we're all expected to pay taxes. But here's the thing that stuns me. I never, the coverage of Hunter Biden in the paper is sort of like an ideological litmus test. If you're on the right, he's a drug addicted, hooker chasing scumbag who's living off his father's teat and lying about his daddy's influence, contributes nothing to the world other than trucking, bartering, and trading in his father's name and presumably in access to him. If you're on the other end of the spectrum, I don't know what he's perceived as, but I whenever I see a picture of Hunter with a cigarette dangling out of his mouth, unshaven, and some woman half naked in the mirror standing next to him, I'm like, oh, this is so tawdry. Do we really have to have politics be reduced to this level? But yet I read here in the New York Times today of the money that he withdrew from his company unlawfully and didn't pay taxes on. And listen to this number. This is a quote. ATM withdrawals, 683,212 in, quote, payments hyphen various women, end quote. Payments various women. What are you spending $683,212 on Hunter? Are these hookers? And I mean, I want to know about how did you end up with the $12 sum? Was that one interaction, or did somebody charge you 212, or did you spend 2,212 for deluxe treatment? It's ugly. But here's the backstory. We called this a long time ago. We called that Hunter undoubtedly was going to face tax charges. This was back when he tried to cut a deal with the feds that he would enter a diversionary program for lying on a form about his drug addiction when he registered to purchase a handgun. And a federal judge, I think it's Judge Noriega in Maryland, took a look at the plea deal, and the deal was to extinguish all his liability for things under investigation. And it looked too good to be true. And she didn't want it to be, as she put it, a rubber stamp for a deal that was largely unprincipled. So she refused to accept the plea deal. It went back to investigators. Mike will talk a little bit more about the role of a congressional probe. And those and a special prosecutor, Weiss, was appointed. He turned up some stones, and now it looks like Hunter's facing some time in the hoosegow. Faces up to 17 years on tax evasion. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, so apparently James Comer, who is the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, he's given credit to the two IRS investigators that testified before Congress that the Justice Department had actually mishandled and really slow walked, I think is the quote, the investigation into Hunter Biden for their ability to for the Justice Department's ability to bring charges now. So it's Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler are the IRS employees that indulged the investigation internally with the IRS. And they're quoted as saying that the indictment of Hunter Biden is, quote, a complete vindication of our thorough investigation. Interestingly, Norm, the New York Sun article at the very end there, I'm going to read from that real quick. It says, quote, his gross income, talking about Hunter, nevertheless totaled some $7 million between 2016 and 2020, pointing to his roles on the board of the Ukrainian energy company Burisma and a Chinese private equity fund, as well as his position at a law firm. Hunter Biden did eventually file his taxes in 2020 while facing a child support case in Arkansas, and the back taxes were paid by a third party, prosecutors have said in court documents.
I mean, I guess we're going to just have to keep kicking at these stones. And when we overturn or turn over all the stones in the driveway, they're going to lead a path back to Joe Biden. There's just simply no way that Hunter was pulling in this kind of money on his own merits. He was trading on his father's name and undoubtedly getting access to his father for well-placed people. This is a guy without talents. His only real talent appears to be, spending too much money and spending too much on hookers, too much on cocaine, and living a luxury lifestyle without having without having an earning capacity associated with anything other than his name. It's a sad story. I guess it's a vindication for the rule of law.
Well, and it's interesting. It may be a bridge to an impeachment of President Biden. Dawn says maybe Joe will pardon Hunter and now drop out of the 2024 race. That's an interesting theory, especially considering many people are now speculating that this is one of the issues to drop that is going to lead to a further encroachment an inquiry into the Biden role in Burisma while he was vice president.
Well, it has to. I mean, really, there's no other way to look at this than that Hunter is his daddy's son, and he undoubtedly wasn't playing this game without his daddy's approval. And the question is, how involved was Dad? And how much did Dad benefit? I guess we'll find out. Hey, so interesting update on Owen Schroyer. I checked the Bureau of Prisons webpage this morning and was startled to see that his release date had been changed from 12/8, that is today, to unknown. Now, I don't know how they code things at the Bureau of Prisons, so I was concerned that as a result of the Newsweek piece we talked about yesterday, Bureau of Prisons people decided to hold him a little longer. There is an increased surveillance of individuals saying things that are hostile toward the government and others by the FBI. I wondered, did Hunter get swept up in that? And so I started making phone calls this morning, and I spoke to Owen's mother about a half an hour before we went on the air this morning. She's out in the Midwest. I don't want to say where. Owen did call her at 3 a.m. this morning. He had been released from prison and was en route with colleagues of his to a local hotel where they were going to regroup. So keep an eye on the airwaves. It won't be through Law and Legitimacy. Mike and I actually work as lawyers during the day, but I'm sure that Owen has something planned for today, and it'll involve a lot of hooting and hollering online. So again, Owen Schroyer has been released from the Oakdale Federal Penitentiary. He is not at liberty, so to speak. He's not a free man. He remains under the custody and control of the federal probation officers, where he is on supervised release for 1 year. And I expect that there will be some struggles with his custodians, because he can be returned to prison if he violates the conditions of supervised release. Keep a close eye on what they do to Owen and how they try to restrict his speech. If they do, I suspect we'll be back in court for yet more fighting. So congratulations to Owen. Those of you who are supporters of Owen, you can take a deep breath and breathe a sigh of relief. Owen has been released. Luttrell, isn't it time for me to pick up Owen in the rain in his pickup truck? Maybe, except Owen got released at 3 o'clock in the morning, apparently, and I was asleep, and he's in Connecticut, and I'm in Louisiana, and I got other clients to attend to, and so I'll be in court today elsewhere. Congratulations to Owen, though. You're out. Hey, if you've not yet seen the interview dropped last night between Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson, give it a look. It's already had 7.2 million views, and it was late in the day that it was dropped. Mike gave me a heads up. I listened to it in the car last night at about 8 o'clock, and at that point it had 2.2 million views. So in 10 hours overnight, it garnered at least 5 million more views. It's 91 minutes. It's vintage Alex. And Tucker doesn't have an opportunity to say much. He simply drops some softballs and Alex hits them. I enjoyed the interview. I know Alex pretty well. I have a passing relationship with Tucker, meaning a text message relationship with Tucker. But I've spent hours with Alex and have enormous respect for him. But one of the things that I didn't like about the interview is, yes, the world is changing. Yes, there are pressures that are converging and creating crisis and flashpoints. Yes, populism is a thing, and we all want autonomy in our community, in significance in our own skins, a sense of self-control in our communities, and we don't want to be forced into some homogenous model of the human spirit that is dictated by others. And thus we rail about such things as globalism, algorithms, technocrats, and so forth. But as I listened to Alex and Tucker, I thought the word they appeared a little too often and uncritically. What are they doing to us? What are they going to do next? What is their plan? We need more focus on who they are in order for us or for we to retain the things that we think are of value. So, Tucker, Alex, if you're watching, which, I have my doubts, we understand the problem. We understand that we understand canaries in a mine shaft. We understand that the oxygen in the mine shaft is getting a little bit thin. But who are they? And Alex will talk about the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, and Tucker will talk about technocrats and global elites. Let's name names. If we're going to try to take our communities back, and we have the power of the purse and the power of protest and the power of resistance, we need to have greater focus on who it is we're resisting and why, and what the alternatives are to the lives that others are trying to compel us to live. Alex talked on the show about his book, The Great Awakening, his new book. And apparently it has in it plans for how to retake control or regain control of your own life and your own community. I confess not to having read it yet. It's on my list of things to read. The other thing, if you're looking for good humor,
If he doesn't want the help of the best alcohol attorney in the country, that's his prerogative. But I do feel a little bit, I'm 1 degree of separation away. There's no excuse,
Well, but how do you think? How do you think I felt? I've been representing the guy. It'll be 5 years in March. I didn't know he had the liquor out there. So I didn't know my client Owen Schreier was released.
Well, I love the name, and I'm sure that it is likely contract distilled, right? Which means that he is using someone else's facilities, and they've sort of white labeled it on his behalf. It's a great move economically. I think that whomever he's partnered with down there in Texas will likely see a huge boost. So credit to Alex for using his platform to put money in the pockets of a business that needs capacity. And I think that's great. There are other businesses all over the country, Alex, especially here in North Carolina. If there's a pull and demand for that product, you can come to North Carolina. I know of several breweries and distilleries that would perhaps add to that capacity and expand that footprint.
And now Tucker's out with his. I guess they're beginning teasers about his new enterprise. What do you know about this, Mike?
So I went to his profile this morning, and the link to tuckercarlson.com brings you here, and it says Tucker is back. Get on board. If you click Team Tucker, it takes you here where it asks you to create an account. And I think, Norm, you were privy to Tucker's push for some sort of platform. He was going to do something in the media space post his exit from Fox News. And he gave you some rough timeline of when to expect that. And here we have. It appears that Tucker Carlson is going to be putting together a new streaming platform. It's going to be behind a paywall. There will be exclusive members-only content, merchandise, etc. And what I expect is that Tucker is going to, he's going to be selective. But I'm sure that there is some sort of network that he will create by and through this streaming platform. I don't know that Tucker necessarily wants to be editor-in-chief or, producer for a number of shows and distance himself from content creation that he clearly loves to do on a day-to-day basis. But suffice it to say that his existence on X has pushed him into a category of visibility that he was being denied while at Fox. And he could be a kingmaker here. I think that the combination of what Elon, Tucker, and now Alex Jones, because that's sort of the other transition here, Norm, is that Elon Musk is now, based on this interview, he is now considering.
How do you know that? Did he announce that under his own handle on X last night? Yeah, I noticed you sent me a note about that this morning. I hadn't heard about that otherwise.
So here's what happened. The quartering on X says, think about how much letting Alex back on X would make the machine rage at Elon Musk, to which Elon responds, "We'll consider. In general, since this platform aspires to be the global town square, permanent ban should be extremely rare. Also, if he does say something false on this platform, then community notes will correct him, whereas that would not be the case elsewhere. Let's hold a poll." And the poll, apparently, and I don't have that poll right now, but the poll as of this morning were somewhere around 80,000 votes. It's probably well north of that now, with about 87% voting in favor of allowing Alex back on the platform. And underneath that poll, Elon comments something to the effect of, "Wow, it seems a lot of people want him back on."
Well, he should be back on. I mean, we talked yesterday about his Alex's continuing relevance.
Well, there is some history there. So we've talked about the Sandy Hook stuff. And in fact, in the interview with Tucker, they talk about that as well. But Alex was pushed off of X not for his take on Sandy Hook. The narrative was written after the fact that was used as some sort of de facto justification but that was after he had already been removed from the platform. And what is interesting about that is that Elon apparently did not realize that that was the case. And we know that this is true from Elon because this has been an issue that has arisen before, especially when he first took over the platform and was attempting to understand who should be let back on because he knew that many had been pushed off. Alex was specifically excluded, and explicitly so, because of his opinions on Sandy Hook, and that came from the mouth of Elon Musk, or the thumbs rather, of Elon Musk. And it appears that Elon is learning more now, or is at least in a position to patiently consider that perhaps the information that he had in his possession at the time that he said those things was categorically false.
Well, I mean, as a person who lives in Connecticut and has litigated some of these Sandy Hook cases, I'm sick to death of hearing about Sandy Hook. It's simply time to pick up our beds and walk and move on. It was a small part of Alex's career. There's litigation. He's in bankruptcy. They're going to resolve that case somehow or another. But Alex has a lot to say, and none of it's about Sandy Hook. So, Elon, bring him back. There is a war going on in the world. It's an intellectual and ideological contest. Alex has a lot to say about it. Love him or you don't have to like him, but people should have the right to listen to him. Elon, we're calling on you to do the right thing and bring him back. Keep an eye on the news this weekend. Today, the United States Supreme Court is meeting in conference. That is, behind closed doors. The 9 justices will sit in their conference room, and they will have prepared for them a list of petitions for certiorari. These are requests from individuals to hear an issue, and the court will decide today, maybe on dozens, perhaps hundreds of petitions, whether to grant them or not. If a petition for certiorari is granted, then it goes to full briefing, to merits briefing and argument and decision. Jake Lang and a couple other January 6 defendants have a certiorari petition pending before the Supreme Court that challenges the applicability of 18 United States Code Section 1512 for Section C on obstruction of an official proceeding. Obstruction of official proceeding means, what it means is really the issue for the Supreme Court. The act itself, the legislation itself was amended to correct a gap in the law incident to the Enron and Arthur Anderson prosecutions, where people were able to evade prosecution after having altered documents. And so it was broadened to include alteration of documents in any form. So shorthand, it may not get me an A on a law review exam, but it's early and I haven't had my enough coffee yet today. This statute has been used in the J6 prosecutions to say that anyone who basically interfered with Congress that day obstructed an official proceeding. And the result is they face up to 20 years in prison. So Joe Biggs, Zach Rell, the Proud Boys were convicted of obstruction of official proceeding. Jake Lang faces trial on that very charge. His trial counsel, Steve Metcalf, filed a motion to dismiss, saying that was an overbroad application of the statute, and the judge agreed. Lang and several other defendants took an appeal to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. In a 2-1 decision, the court said, "Nah, it's okay." And so on Lang's behalf, Metcalf asked me to file a petition for certiorari to the United States Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to consider whether the Justice Department got in over its skis and whether it was taking a statute designed for one purpose and applying it in a context that will have a chilling effect on freedom of speech, in particular the right to protest and petition for redress of grievances. We're hopeful that the court will grant certiorari, but realistically, the odds are against us. What increases, because cert grants are rarely made. I mean, thousands of them appear in the court each year. The court only hears 60 to 70 cases per year. But what gives us hope in part is the 1512 count is also active against Donald Trump. And there are hundreds of other individuals who are facing 1512 prosecutions incident to January 6th, and dozens, if not scores, of people who have already been convicted under it. So this is a piece of law that needs to be examined. We're hoping the Supreme Court grants certification. Lang's petition on this issue is coextensive. That is, it was joined with different petitions by 2 others, Miller and Fisher. The politics of the law are interesting. I'm an outsider. I'm not a law professor. I'm not a blue chip lawyer. And so members of the legal academy poked at me because they don't want Lang's petition to be granted, because then I would have the right to argue that case. They want it for themselves, and they're trying
Just
to
spoiled brats.
they're trying to direct it toward one of the other defendants. And so no less a person than Owen Kerr poked fun at my petition. He basically saying it was overwritten. And he took an excerpt from it once and said, "We need more cowbells." And I wrote him a note back, "This is for you, Oren." But they want it to be argued by a man named David Smith. Smith is a guy about my age. He's got a son who's very active at the bar and whose career he has promoted in the J6 context. But I was reading, and Smith has privately been critical of me. I've heard through the grapevine, that I refer to obscure books too often in argument and so forth. But I noted that in reading Julie Kelly's book, that one of Smith's motions on behalf of Stuart Rhodes, because he was one of Rhodes's lawyers, was criticized by a judge as sounding more like a blog page than a legal brief. So, David, I'm watching. I've heard the critiques. Oren, this is for you, baby. I hope the court grants cert, and I hope it grants it in the Lang case so that I can tell both of you, here's my ass, there are your lips, you know what to do. What's up with, yeah.
Here it is, just showing everybody. And then, of course, Norm, you said that it was distributed for conference. And so here's the timeline. December 1st, it was distributed for conference of 12/8. So that is today. They will be making a decision on this case today.
And typically, yeah, and then the announcements will trickle out. Usually they get announced on Monday, I believe. You'll see a long order list on the Supreme Court docket page, granted or denied. I've been involved in two cases where certiorari was granted. Porter v. Nussel back in the 90s, a prisoner rights case, and then Ricci versus DeStefano, a public employment case a decade or so ago. And candidly, you know how old I am? I can't recall whether you get a phone call the very day that cert's granted or not. I just don't know. So I guess we'll find out today, or somebody in my office will. I'll be out playing law. We promised yesterday to talk a little bit more about the Paxton suit, where he is joined by the Daily Wire, and they've sued the State Department for a conspiracy to censor disfavored American media. What's up with that, Mike?
A lot. So essentially, what we're dealing with here, Norm, is the State Department's, it's Attorney General Paxton's position that the State Department provided what they would consider significant encouragement to all sorts of technology, whether it's social media, web browsers, other tech companies, in an effort to limit the circulation of like the Daily Wire and the Federalist and other disfavored outlets, news reporting, that sort of significant encouragement extended to directly encouraging private companies to downrank the media companies in the SEO, so search engine results, to de-amplify the reach, to deplatform members of those various media companies, to de-boost or demonetize their reporting and their media, to suspend them from the various outlets and accounts that they may occupy via social media, shadow banning them, restricting them, limiting access, putting those labels, those post warning labels on their posts, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter or otherwise. And as such, that aggregate constitutes state action for purposes of a violation of the First Amendment, freedom of the press and free speech, right? And to that end, this lawsuit is aimed at exposing the technology companies that were involved, and two in particular. I forget the names of them right now. One is NewsGuard, which is heralded as the Ministry of Truth, right? And then there's another acronym, but there are many, many others.
I'm reminded of the 60s and 70s when the CIA used to front media organizations, through shell companies, to produce propaganda that the CIA approved of, in some cases wrote, and also to oppose and take on critics of the CIA through ostensibly neutrally written critiques. Garrison, the prosecutor of Clay Shaw in New Orleans, was the target of a lot of that, as was Mark Lane. I've had an opportunity to read. I've had it for decades. I took the opportunity in the last few months to read some of Lane's and Garrison's work. I guess I bought the propaganda way back when. I thought they were off the res and kind of goofy. What I've learned in reading their books is they were both highly respected and highly regarded trial lawyers. Mark Lane had argued cases in front of the U.S. Supreme Court and had litigated successfully both civil and criminal cases. And so the propaganda machine, when the government decides to take you on, can be pretty significant.
Well, I'm going to read, just as we close out the show here, Norm, I'm going to read from the lawsuit one paragraph that I found particularly persuasive in and among 60-something pages. It says, quote, "Even if the State Department defendants did not censor by means of contract and encouragement, they did. They violated the First Amendment by offering coordination. Even if the State Department defendants were not seeking censorship, they were. And even if the censorship was performed independently by private corporations, it wasn't. Private corporate censorship cannot be effective unless it is coordinated across different platforms. The platforms need coordination to ensure they are all censoring the same sorts of materials and not just driving customers to competitors. But the companies themselves cannot coordinate without antitrust difficulties. So they need government coordination. By supplying such coordination, the State Department defendants are abridging media plaintiffs' freedom of speech and freedom of the press."
Amen. Well, let's follow that suit and let's wish them well. State action. The First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech. Now, obviously, there are exceptions, but they're well-known exceptions: defamation, criminal conspiracy, sedition, incitement, and so forth. The government cannot engage in content-based restriction of speech just because it labels it disinformation. The government should be asking not whether the information that is being disseminated is true. It should be asking why the information it regards as untruthful is so appealing to people. Could it be that those people have lost faith in the government, in the government and in the prevailing narrative? The election that is taking place before us, the election campaigns that are taking place before us, suggests that's the case. We've got Donald Trump under indictment in a number of courts, but yet leading in the polls to become president of the United States. Wake up, Uncle Sam. Plenty of people out here are looking at you, and we're seeing your underwear, and we don't like the view. We'd like a fully clothed presidency, a fully closed government, a government that we can respect and agree to be governed by. Instead, we're being sold half truths by half-dressed morons, and we ain't taking it no more. So deal with it.
And I love that paragraph, Norm, because of its ability to get far up into the atmosphere of this issue, that is censorship, and offer a perspective on what it means for private companies to be coordinating together in that way that is violative of antitrust principles, because that's a very obvious transactional observation that if one platform decides that on its own that it is going to push a very popular figure or a popular media company, or to stop allowing it to monetize its content on its platform, but that's not likewise done on the competing platforms, that is in and of itself a sort of a breach of fiduciary duty to any of the shareholders of that company, right? It's not in the interest of that company to deny itself views and money that can be earned from that. So there is a necessity of coordination to avoid any sort of economic disproportionality among the whole thing. So the interesting part of this to me is, yes, freedom of the press, free speech, right, as the lead anchors, sort of the conspiracy to censor also, but offering a perspective on why it is economically necessary for there to be coordination is a very, very strong anchor to the case. So it's something that I'll definitely be paying attention to.
Well, we got to run, folks. I'm text messaging Alex Jones as we speak. Among the things I'll be asking is, how do I get a bottle of Thus Always to Tyrants for you, Mike? I know you need that classy bourbon so that you can begin to prepare for sales of it in North Carolina and elsewhere. Have a great weekend, folks. I'm sort of abruptly on the run today. I've got about a 90-minute drive for my first court appearance, which is set to begin 87 minutes from now. So maybe I'll speed a little, or maybe I'll be a little late. One of the glories of being a trial lawyer is they can't begin without you. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for checking in.
Norm, make sure you go and register that trademark for him. Class 33.
Oh yeah, I'd know how to do that. I didn't even know there was a class 33.
I just did all the work for you. Go ahead and get it done. Tell him it's done.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll be back on Monday morning, as Norm has already said. You can find us here on X at LawPod Daily. We have just a few views shy of what Tucker and Alex can garner on their stuff. Not a big deal.
Yeah, like orders of tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions. But we're working on it, you know?
That's not a big deal. You know what I mean? It's just a few views. YouTube, Rumble as well. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Overcast. Wherever you find premium podcasts, please subscribe, leave us 5 stars and a nice review. And everybody, enjoy your weekend. Norm, enjoy your weekend. And tell
Objection.
I send
Objection.
my cards.
I will. Thanks, everybody. Be well. Talk to you Monday.
Damn it. Overruled, as always.
I feel right at home.
Bye.
Bye.